Hey, are we live? I think we are. Hello, welcome. If you are joining us today, welcome. My name is Amy Moore Shipley, and I am Director of Communications for Denver Food Rescue. If you've been a part of our community, you've probably seen me over the years. I've been around since 2014 with the organization, and it's one of my biggest passions, and it's definitely related to food, is foundation. So what you're going to watch today is a conversation, super casual, super fun, but really important topics that are going to lay out kind of some of our goals for the rest of 2021, but with staff, with our directors and managers, and Christine Alford, our fearless leader, will jump on in a moment as well. But we're going to talk. We're going to answer some of your questions, and this is really a preview to 3 more panel discussions that we're going to host the rest of the year around this idea that that food work is not just limited to food, but really if it is the basis on how we go forward in so many different spheres, if that's social, political, economic, environmental for sure, that is going to be a really good, smart way to move forward as we become even more coalition-minded, working together, mutual aid. And I have to say that, you know, when you think about community health, public health, really at the end of the day, small, like big picture brought down to small, it's really about soil health. If our soil's not healthy, our food's not healthy, our ecosystems aren't healthy, and we aren't. So I invite you to kind of be thinking about your own ideas of what Food is Foundation means to you. And I hope that you enjoy hearing from our amazing staff. It is a blessing every day to work with these people, and we want you to be a part of it. So I'm going to kick it over right now to our executive director, Christine Alford, and she's going to give some words on what it means to her that Food is Foundation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this early eve, late afternoon. I'm Christine Alford, the executive director with Denver Food Rescue. This series started off, as a thought, a part of our day-to-day conversations that we have here as Denver Food Rescue staff. Or maybe it really began when my journey began as executive director and some of the feelings that I felt in different spaces in the food access landscape. Here at DFR, we recognize that food is a connector of all things, and the lack thereof is a continual contributing factor to the food sovereignty issues that we seek to address. Some may view this landscape as a predominantly white space, and we all know that without racial equity within these spaces, we can't change the systemic barriers and oppression at its root. So we want to really make sure that we are trying and diligently, deliberately doing that in every way that we can. In our communities, we have seen a rise in violence, and even before the COVID-19 pandemic, it's a proven fact that for every 1% increase in food insecurity, there's a 12% increase in violence around. And why isn't food one of the foundations or one of the driving forces as a part of youth or domestic violence? Why isn't food the foundation or one of the foundations for healing spirits and minds? When we think about mental health, how many times is a question asked around food security or even hunger in that moment of your section? So really thinking about that, it really has to be more than just a checkbox. It has to be more than just something that we put a part of our onboarding toolkits and everything that we do. Another form of systemic oppression, but maybe we'll talk about that later. Amy, go on ahead and jot that note down for me. When we think about it as a walk of life. And I don't know about y'all, but food is a way to bring people from all walks of life together, a foundation for confidence, for self-sufficiency and sustainability. It's also for us parents, I don't know about y'all again, but it's a way for me not only to provide nourishment, but to get a little bit of quiet time in the house when people's mouths are full and they're eating. So it's very useful for me in that way as a foundation. You know, food is a foundation, and we need to start having these conversations of why it is. And if it isn't a part of your foundation and everything that you do, how can we make it? So again, thank you all for joining us. This is just the first start to our 4-part series, and we really, really hope that you guys get something out of this. We hope that you guys engage with us, and we hope that you guys learn something and encourage your neighbors. I've been saying kind of this thing of everybody comes from different hoods, but how can we really put the neighbor back in neighborhood? And we're hoping that through these series, that will not only is food as foundation, but it's we're utilizing these series as a connector. So I'll be done rambling. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. And I am now going to kick it back over to Amy.
Sweet. Thank you, Christine. All right, so we've got, I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, but we have 4 staff, and really I think just like 4 questions. So not a lot, but hopefully some time to expand, and I'll be in here to host, and if anything comes up where we can expand the conversation, I will definitely do that. But we're gonna start with our staff introducing themselves, their role, and any background information that they wish to share with you. And we're gonna start it off with Dr. Jamie Anderson.
Thanks, Amy. And thank you, Christine, for the great introduction. My name is Jamie Anderson. I'm the program director here at DFR, which means that I get to work with our wonderful no-cost grocery program communities to make sure that each of our programs has everything that they need to bring food to their communities. I also have a PhD in archaeological science, and my research was about how climate change in the past impacted people's ability to produce food.
Cool. Awesome, thanks. Stolik, you're next.
At DFR, and I joined DFR on January 2021. I went to school in Claremont, California. I studied environmental analysis, which was very interdisciplinary, just a little bit of everything. Before to join DFR, I was the community engagement fellow at PITSA, so mostly really connecting students to different local grassroots organizations for either for research purposes or for volunteer opportunities and things of that nature. Yeah.
Cool. I don't know if that got cut off for just me or everyone, but Stolik's our volunteer manager. So if you want to volunteer with us, that's who you're going to connect to. And of course, we'll share out all of our contact information in the end as well. But thank you both. All right. I believe Kessia is up next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kessia Lozano. I am the Program Operations Coordinator here at DFR. I joined the team last August, so I've just been really excited to see our team grow and just to be part of this really beautiful work community. I moved to Denver it wasn't last year, it's 2019, to do a service year working with our houseless neighbors. And as I just got more involved in our nonprofit community, I knew that I wanted to stick around. So I found DFR, and now Denver's my new home. So yeah, it's been a really lovely time. My position at DFR is working with Jamie to make sure all the details of our no-cost grocery programs are ironed out. I do a lot of driving around. I deal with our stipend volunteers, always just kind of boots on the ground, helping out where I can. It's honestly a really great job. So
Sweet, thank you. And last but never least, Michelle.
Hey everybody, I'm the operations manager. My name is Michelle Christians. I'm responsible for donor relations, food procurement, oh my goodness, food safety, and maintaining partnerships with other food rescue organizations. I have a bachelor's in fine arts in photography from Rochester Institute of Technology. And I continue to pursue photography through documentation for social justice projects I believe in. I also have, I'm also on the board and help run Headwaters Protectors here in Denver, and we meet every Sunday to provide clean water and compassionate trash services to folks experiencing homelessness.
So cool. Yeah, busy lady.
Busy lady.
Well, the first question, I'm going to kick it back over to Jamie and Salik, and it's two parts. But what drew you to Denver Food Rescue, and how does it align with your passions?
So I'll go first because that's what the script Amy gave me said. Thanks, Amy. So I was drawn to Denver Food Rescue because I unsuccessfully tried to immigrate to another country for the majority of my 20s and eventually was unable to do that. And so I moved back to Denver and felt really grateful that I had this great place to come back to, which is my hometown. I was born here and raised here. And when I moved back, I wanted to find a way to get involved with just giving back to the community. My parents always gave me like a really strong sense of how important it is to have public service and also to like be good to your neighbors. So thanks for that, parents. I did actually listen to you, even though it seemed like I maybe wasn't when I was a teenager. And I found DFR through one of the trivia nights that Amy was hosting. And I just thought it was such a cool organization. I became a volunteer and now I work here.
Awesome. Thank you. Salik, why do you like this? What are your passions?
I think, after college, I was looking for a job or a position that will really align with my my passion, which is basically environmental justice and specifically community-based initiatives that not only benefits people, but also the environment. I had few internships and I had, this fellowship that I was doing at Pitzer College. But then I came across a volunteer management position at DFR, and I took the time to read a little bit more about the organization and your operations. I just like how the work is not only addressing health equity, but there's also an understanding of the environmental impact of the work that we are doing, and also the education side of it as well. So basically connecting education, health equity, also environmental justice. So I really like that. That's why I was interested in joining the team.
Yeah. And we're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
Got to mix it up. Like, we're very women heavy here. So yeah, get a little male energy. All right. Kessia and Michelle, you're next. Kessia, sorry, wait, is that what the script says? I'm so sorry. Nope, Michelle.
Freelance photography and volunteered for Metro Caring, and it just really opened my eyes to the food access and what we have here in Denver. I just had no idea the levels it was at. I was inspired to continue working in food security after my photography contract ended. And when I saw, actually on Facebook, I think maybe through Amy's Facebook or Emily's, who's another team member, I saw that there was a posting they were making about a new job, and I saw it and I was like, I want that job. I'm not even job searching. I'm a photographer. But I've worked a lot in volunteer capacity with food security. And so I was just really excited. I love the DFR's mission and the ways we execute it daily. I just feel really incredibly lucky to work with people that inspire me every day. And yeah, this place just, I feel like we're making a positive impact every day. So it feels good and I love it.
Yeah, the food moves every day.
Yeah, the food moves.
363 days a year for the last, since 2014? I don't know, it's crazy. But thank you for joining, and you're like relationships queen, and I know you're gonna kill it. So if you are connected to any food donations, Michelle is your person. Also photography, she's very talented. All right, Kezia, what are your passions and how does it connect to DFR?
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. I think I'm unmuted. So my passions and what drew me to DFR, like I said, I was in the city of Denver after graduating undergrad, working a service year. So I knew that I wanted to stay, and I knew that I really loved the small, like family-based work environment that I experienced at my previous job as well. And growing up in South Texas, my parents and my elders really just hammered into me that family and community are like one and the same. They're synonyms for each other. And I really just pride myself on carrying that wherever I go. I moved around a lot as a kid. And as an adult, I've hopped from Texas to Virginia to now Denver. So I really just make an effort to connect myself to the community wherever I end up. I spent so much of my childhood helping my parents, help our neighbors, even when, and honestly, especially when we were facing the same problems. So mutual aid, while I didn't learn that term until college, it was something that was very and ingrained in my life. So the fact that community is the center of Denver Food Rescue, that was one of the deciding factors for me. And I knew that I would fit into not only our work family, but our larger Denver family as well. But yeah, it's a really incredible job, and my love for community has just been a constant. So I knew that I had to try to make it my career, and here I am living the dream. So
Sweet. Well, y'all can stay on the screen because you're next in line, Kezia, to answer this next question. Yeah, just keep going. But what does Food as Foundation mean to you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, everybody can say that food is an important part of their life, right? Like we eat, that's how we get our energy to do anything. And my dad likes to kind of half jokingly say that food is literally the meaning of life. He just explains it in such a goofy way. He's like, everybody just spends so much time thinking about what they're going to eat next so they can use that energy to do something else. And then while they're doing that other thing, they're thinking about their next meal. So it's kind of his joke, but I genuinely feel like there's so much truth in that. Food influences the way that we feel, the way that we emote, the way that we connect to our community. And it influences and continues to influence so much of my life physically and mentally, from the food insecurity and stress that it caused when I was a child growing up in a low-income immigrant neighborhood. The joy and sweat of cooking with my tias in our kitchen, the ancestral trauma that I feel when I cook certain dishes and touch certain ingredients, and just the nostalgia is so powerful. Whether it's a painful or a beautiful memory, food is really at the center of all we do. Whether it's something that we don't have to worry about or it's something that consumes our waking thoughts. So when we all really sit back and think and admit to ourselves how important food is in our lives, I think it's impossible not to say that it's a human right, and something that we should collectively strive to think of and to provide for other people. I think that we should want everyone to be able to eat and to nourish themselves and cook the food that is foundational to their cultural identity, to their family identity, and really to just help their spirit so that everyone can worry a little less about, what they're going to eat next. So that's what Food as Foundation is to me.
Thank you. Beautiful as always. Michelle, you next?
Yeah, so food is foundation, what it means to me. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is just thinking about, well, my own personal experience, which I'll probably go into a little later on, but then also a lot of my friends who are unsheltered right now, or folks who I know who are having trouble buying groceries. You know, it's a struggle. It's a struggle every day, and it takes up so much mental energy to figure out how you're going to eat that it's really hard to thrive in other areas of your life. When you're really focused on how am I going to get my next meal, like how am I going to get $5 to take a bus to get somewhere where there's food closer by, and then pay for a meal, or how can I afford groceries? How can I get to the grocery store? I mean, those questions alone are just, they're so time consuming. There's so much mental energy that goes into answering those questions that I feel like it's impossible to thrive. And so if we're able to have that basic need met, and we just know like there is going to be food on the table, we can start focusing on other things and start to really grow and challenge ourselves in new ways and really, thrive, like I said.
Totally. And not just even food, but ideally food that is like healthful to our entire body, which, is why DFR prioritizes fresh and whole produce, because that's another, historically food pantries and food banks are really good at just filling stomachs with calories, but maybe not nutrients and other things like that. So yeah, awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
Jamie's up on the screen, so I guess she's next. What does food foundation mean to you?
I think I'm still muted.
There you go. You're not now.
Okay, great. Just watching that lag for the mute. So I prepared something to say that was about like how food is, a huge part of community. And then Kessia and Michelle said it way better than I was going to. So I want to talk about a little bit different aspect of it, which is how much food is also the foundation of our physical communities. Just thinking about like anytime you look at a landscape that people have lived in at any time, you can see subtle changes to the landscape in the way that agriculture or cultivation or even hunting have like changed the way that the landscape looks. Like everywhere we look is a built environment that people made to get food. And so then we think about the geography of Denver. When I think about the geography of my town, a big portion of that is thinking about like, oh, there's my grocery store, or like, oh, there's a restaurant I really like. Like just do an experiment as you're looking around the city sometime and look at your favorite street and see how many things on the street are about food and are about like that food infrastructure, which is just always present for us and creates like a physical community that we live in. And I was thinking about this question and that physical structure in relation to the recent gun attacks in Boulder, which occurred at a supermarket. And sorry, I'm going to get a little emotional about it, but that like really attacked a big part of a community for people. And just thinking about the importance that food has to that community and feeling unsafe there, what that means for people in that community. That's really present in my mind right now, how much food is the foundation of just our physical communities.
Awesome take. Thank you so much. Yeah. You want to follow that up?
I feel like everyone touched a little bit on everything that I want to talk about, but I wanted to spend a little bit also on the political aspect of things. Anybody who's familiar with the French Revolution, of course it was way more complicated than that, but the hike in the price of bread played a huge role in actually creating the whole situation. But the other thing that I really want to talk about is the spiritual aspect of food, right? And I'm originally from Benin, And Benin is well known in the world for our spirituality, and specifically Vodou, which is on one of the millions of African religions. But we use food to I don't want to say we, because I don't practice Vodou, but in Benin, people who practice Vodou use food to basically communicate with the spirits, make offerings to the spirits, depending on the period of the year, depending on the region. Each region have their own ways of doing it. Sometimes it's either food or crops, corn, rice. Sometimes it's cooked food. And sometimes it's just plants. Sometimes it's palm oil, right? We produce a lot of palm oil. So so I just wanted to expand on the spiritual aspect of food as well. Yeah.
Totally. Thanks.
Thank you.
Also, the point of like the price for food. I don't remember the statistic or the percent point, but like how much more other countries spend on food than the US does, and how that contributes to our notion too of it being something that can be wasted or thrown away. And I think that, and speaking to revolution, of like when people start to really realize things that might be like going down, food is going to be food and water, like one of the first things that starts to change, and people are going to be paying more for it, and maybe start that wake up call to the importance of it being something that we can't just like toss away like we do so many other things. So yeah, thank you. What do we got next? A very open-ended, yes, Michelle, you are next. A very open-ended question, which I think is a really good, like when we can have dinner parties again, a really nice thing to kind of engage people. But the question is pretty simple. Just what's your food story?
Yeah, all right. Well, gosh, there's so many answers to this question, right? I've been eating my whole life. So I've got a lot of stories. But I guess the story I want to focus on is when I first moved to Denver. I moved here in 2009 accidentally, which I think is a lot of people's story, actually, that I've talked to. I was on a road trip with friends, and I planned on staying here for a month, and then another month went by, and I was on my third month, and I was like, oh, okay, I think I live here now. And so I moved here without any stuff, without any money, without a job, without any plans, right after college, and kind of just had to throw it together to survive. And so I moved into like a small little bedroom with another person, and he and I were very platonic, but shared a room. And that was interesting because I couldn't afford rent. And I became a Montessori school teaching assistant, and it didn't even pay enough to eat. So I started learning all the good dumpsters in Denver. I don't know about you guys, but man, the Whole Foods dumpsters used to feed my, not just my soul, but my body. I used to, dumpster dive from all different sorts of places, and didn't really know about the places like Denver Food Rescue or Metro Caring. And so I think as I became, more aware of what was happening in Denver, what kind of resources there were, I started working at as a volunteer at Same Cafe, which is a pay what you can restaurant, and started volunteering for meals. So I would work in exchange for meals, like sweeping the floors or wiping down tables, making pizza, all different sorts of things. And it just taught me a lot about, kind of the thing I was talking about before, like thriving or surviving. I was really in survival mode, eating out of dumpsters, volunteering at anywhere that would give me food, using, my charm to try and get friends to make me a meal, and trading them photography. So I think food played a big role in my arrival here in Denver, and just how I was able to to fill my belly. It started with dumpsters, and it eventually, I mean, now look at me, full-time jet.
You're getting the food before it goes into the dumpster now, because you said what, 2009? I think that was still the beginning of when food rescue, food waste was like a pedestrian issue. So I bet just Denver Food Rescue, even operating in Denver, since that time, we've saved a lot of food from going into the landfill. And fun fact, Boulder Food Rescue started from a group associated with Food Not Bombs, which is a really awesome organization, decentralized, just prioritizing feeding people. And there's still unfortunately limitations even today, even though we know that there is a way to stop that from happening, but there's food still ends up in dumpsters. And unfortunately, obviously, once it's there, we legally can't do anything with it. But that's hopefully really changing. Yet at the same time, we still see headlines where there are police guarding dumpsters outside of grocery stores during natural disasters in Texas. Recently, we saw that. So still lots of opportunity to go in and rescue. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah. Gotta get that food saved. Rescue that food.
Oh, thank you. Salik, what is your food story?
Oh,
You're still muted.
Michelle. All right, you got it?
Yep.
All right, cool. Food story. Well, I grew up in Benin, and I want to say a big portion of my life, I grew up around trees and fruit trees and things like that. And for us, when I say for us, so people who grew up in those type of region, when you say snacks, the first thing I think about is just fruits and vegetables, because you just have to walk out of your house and see a kiwi tree or a mango tree, avocado trees, So when I moved to the US, and a lot of people didn't know what a star fruit tree looked like, or what I don't know, an avocado tree looks like, or how many varieties of avocados you can have, or how many varieties of mangoes, papayas, 15 different varieties, of papayas. You have papaya carrots. You have papaya that taste like carrots, right? I've seen avocados that are big as my head, So I don't know, that was very different to me, But that really changed, as I was growing up, right? Because of climate change, growing up in different part of the country, toward the north, I grew up there until I was about maybe 10 years old, 8 years old. And then I moved back to the south on the coast. But I saw a lot of changes, happening in the second community that I lived in, really on the coast. There was a, community of fishermen, right? So those communities got wiped out because of basically the rising sea level that was happening. A lot of people left and lost their houses. So that really kind of started to change a little bit. The food, we went from actually having different trees around us, even passion fruit, for example, and stuff like that, to having nothing, because not only because of climate change, but also because we have GMOs coming in. People now we prefer getting bigger apples, bigger mangoes, cheaper stuff, right? And then you also have, communities being, the environment being destroyed to build, communities on the coast, nice houses and nice hotels, 5-star hotels and things like that. So that kept happening. But the other thing that I also think about when I talk about the story of food in Africa, there's a very complicated relationship between colonialism, capitalism, and food, specifically in those countries on the coast that we call gatekeeper states. Basically, those are the states that are there to actually take over natural resources from. And a lot of these countries in West Africa have been dedicated to just grow cash crops, not just in West Africa, also East Africa. So you have, cotton, right? So people, instead of growing food, they prefer grow cotton to sell the cotton. And this cotton is coffee, rubber trees, for instance. Those type of crops go directly to the West, right, for production and stuff like that. So there's a really complicated relationship there with food, and that's just me constantly just kind of like learning and very interested in like what it means, what for us, for people who are from Africa or grew up in Africa, what relationship do we have with food, and based on everything that's happening around, right? Yeah.
So much. Thank you. That's like tip of the iceberg on all that. But thank you so much for sharing that story. Is it Jamie next? Sure is.
All right. Am I unmuted? You can hear me? Great. My story is going to be a lot shorter. But I mentioned earlier that I spent my 20s trying to immigrate to another country. The country was England. And while I lived there, they had like a conservative government come to power that made it increasingly difficult to be an immigrant there. Their like literal policy is for immigration is known as a hostile environment. That's how the government describes it. And they just basically made it more and more expensive to obtain visas. And so as I lived there, my life became like more and more financially precarious, which was obviously very stressful for me and ultimately why I decided to leave. But there were a few particular years there where I had a big group of friends who are both from England and other parts of the British Isles, and then also very international. And we all wound up kind of pooling our resources to have these big family dinners all the time. And so whoever could do it would host a dinner like several times a week and just feed everybody. And it was never like, everyone made you feel like your friendship is really all you need to bring to this. And it was spearheaded by one friend in particular who's now a professional chef and who has really made me think a lot about food in my life. So thanks, Amelia, you're great. But just that community that my friends made where everybody like taught each other different cultural meals and also helped each other out when we didn't have money for our own meals was so meaningful to me that it's really made me think about food as like a communal experience at all times to be shared with everyone.
Totally. Absolutely. Thank you. Kessia.
Yeah. So my food story, I feel like I can't talk about food without talking about my culture. I'm an indigenous Mexican American. So more specifically, my parents are from Mexico and my family is indigenous Mexican. So we are Chichimeca and Mexica. And I was born and raised in Texas. So many good food confluences in that state. I love Tex-Mex food. I'm like a professional Tex-Mex connoisseur. It's like my thing. But I also think that just like so many other like BIPOC people in this country, I can't talk about my food story, not only without talking about my culture, but without bringing up white supremacy and scarcity and the fact that that is genuinely the root of in this country of where all of our food insecurity began. My food story is delicious. It's Mexican food, which like who doesn't love Mexican food? You have the chiles, the beans, tomatoes, maize, avocados. My grandparents actually did have an avocado tree in their yard. So I know what it looks like. But my food story is also the fact that I struggled with food insecurity throughout my life. Up until very recently. And my parents struggled with food insecurity and their parents struggled with food insecurity, just like all of my ancestors have struggled with food insecurity since colonizers invaded this country. And we can't talk about food without acknowledging the fact that our white supremacist, like neo-colonial state, just like Select was talking about as well, the colonial state just decides who deserves food and who doesn't. And it's just been a continual thing for the past centuries. From my ancestors banned from farming on their own land, to certain heritage crops being made illegal, to our modern day food apartheid that we can observe here in Denver. I live in the Park Hill community, and we're in the middle of the food apartheid area. So every one of our food stories, regardless of what we're talking about, and if we're thinking of happy memories or sad memories or just delicious memories, we need to center and include the fight for justice and equity and food sovereignty for everyone, because it all started when the conquest began. And we can't talk about food in this country and the contributions of the indigenous folks that have cultivated these incredible crops that now feed the entire world without acknowledging the fact that we don't have access to those foods. So yeah.
Heck yeah. Can you speak like another hour on that? No, not
Yes.
But, and if you are just tuning in, you are watching the first part of 4 that will happen throughout 2021 with Denver Food Rescue, called Food is Foundation. Pretty much asking, and I think Kezia, you just did a really great job of tying together all of those things, but why should food be a foundation for political, economic, environmental, and social work, and the way that it all ties together? And, you know, down the line, we're going to hear from, like in future panels, we're going to hear from other organizations that aren't even necessarily in food work, but their approach to how they do their work is so important. And then how can we bring in food? But awesome. We've got 2 more questions, and they're Denver, more local questions and action-based. So if you have been watching and you still are, thank you so much. We appreciate your ears. And of course, you can always drop questions into the chat. All right, so our next question starts off with Jamie, and the question is, what do you think Denver is doing well in regard to food work, and what could it do better?
Well, I wanted Kezia to answer part of this because I know she has firsthand experience with it, but I'll talk about a little bit first, just to make it easier on the panel, who I know is swapping between these cameras. So Kezia mentioned the issue of food apartheid. When I first got hired at Denver Food Rescue, during my interview, I used the term food desert, and our former coworker, who we all miss very much, Terry, she immediately told me that we don't say food desert anymore because a desert is a beautiful place full of life. And we say food apartheid because an apartheid is a choice by a political entity. And that is really clear when you look at the geography of Denver. Like, so many choices were made to privilege certain communities, white communities, wealthy communities, non-immigrant communities, over other communities. And one of those big ones is food. So if you look at the map of where Denver does not have grocery stores, Park Hill, which is a historically Black neighborhood, is a big hole in the map because it does not have a close grocery store. Nice. So that we miss you, Terry. We do. And another big one is Westwood, which is a historically Latinx neighborhood. Those are the 2. And then Globeville / Elyria Swansea, which is already divided by I-70, which was another choice that the government made about which communities they could just put an interstate through the middle of. That community also does not have good access to a grocery store. So another thing that we have tried to do at DFR to somewhat alleviate these effects, aside from having no-cost grocery programs in parts of the city that are experiencing food apartheid, is this year we've tried to do some direct money back to our community. But as Kezia will tell you, we ran into some bureaucratic issues with that.
Yeah. So we have so many incredible supporters from around the Denver community that empower us financially to do what we continue to do every day, which is provide food and opportunity for people living within these food apartheid areas. And through one of our grants through the city of Denver, we were hoping, and we started to use some of that money to directly pay some of our volunteers who, again, give up their time every week to help feed their community. They pack the boxes, they sort through donations, and they're there collecting quick info, and they're there rain or shine. They're incredibly reliable people, and they really are the backbone of our organization. So Jamie and I wanted to give them something back financially, that way that they had the power to spend it on whatever they needed. And through that grant with the city of Denver, we thought that we would be able to employ undocumented folks, as well as some of our community members who are living with a disability and receive Social Security checks. But as the bureaucracy often does, there was a wrench thrown in our plans pretty early on, and we had to require the signing and use of tax documents. So it really it was a devastating blow, and Jamie and I just kind of went back and forth, just like kind of lamenting the fact that we were trying to help our community, and we thought that these funds would be able to be directed to whoever we want them to be. But we got caught up again with the legal issues of hiring undocumented folks, and the fact that our city continues to undervalue and exploit this community that is continuing to pay into the economy. They contribute in taxes. They contribute in so many ways that aren't simply financial. And we are unable to pay them, and we're unable to compensate them because of the city of Denver. So I think that while it's incredibly important to acknowledge and be thankful and grateful for the money that we receive from all these different organizations, I really just would love to see more, maybe not lenient, just actually, yes, leniency and more freedom for us to do what our community is asking us to do. And yet we are here trying to collect tax documents. We had to unfortunately stop paying some of our volunteers, which was an incredibly painful decision that we had to make. But yeah, it's been a struggle, and I think that it's something that Jamie and I very recently have had to deal with through the city of Denver. So, yay.
Yeah.
And one other thing, yeah, it is $600 that they have, after $600 they have to file the paperwork. I saw that comment, but I also wanted to say, definitely undocumented folks, and also people who receive like SNAP benefits or live in assisted housing, that kind of thing. They also have like income limits, which are very low, very low when you consider the cost of living in Denver. And so reporting that much money to the IRS can jeopardize benefits for people, even if they are documented citizens of the United States. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were trying to pay them, we continue to pay our current stipend volunteers a livable wage. We pay them $15 an hour for their volunteer work. And that's something that we weren't willing to budge on, because we don't want to compensate people with money that's not livable. So that $600 gets hit really quickly, especially when they're dedicating their time every single week to our organization. So
Total. Yeah. And 2 points to that I think that the city of Denver or just government in general could do better is the notion of, more money to SNAP, but direct cash payment to people instead of this continued, charitable food model. So that takes away agency and choice, and also puts a really hard burden on food banks and food pantries. That's like too much. So, changing how we view aid and not just in philanthropy, but say it, wealth redistribution. Also to that point of how policy is set up to keep people in poverty. For 4 more hours on our Instagram story, there is a really, really great video. I believe it's someone in West Virginia talking about that exact thing where if someone does get a promotion or they get more money, then that takes away certain benefits or increases their rent, a large amount, and then they have to step back and not take that money because it makes it even more impossible to live. So yeah, so many things in that regard when it comes to really just giving people what they need, which is not just a living wage, but a thriving wage, and how much that could really just start to impact so many people experiencing poverty, because that's what it comes down to, right? So thank you both for that answer. And wait, did you say though, like, what is Denver doing well with food?
I can speak a little bit. When I'm answering this question, I'm thinking of Denver not as the government, but as the communities that make up Denver. And I think that in that lens and in that space, Denver communities have really, especially throughout the pandemic, have really stepped up and like shown out for their neighbors. And I think that that's something that we can like positively take away, is that through this work, I've just seen how willing people are to like lend a hand and help out wherever they can, because they care about the people that live around them. And I would love to see the government make some more compassionate changes in how they run, but that's like a whole bigger issue. So when I think of the Denver community and what's going well, I think of the people that are on the ground, the people that are living here, and the people that are continuing to help others thrive and lift people up along with them. So that's definitely something that I enjoy about the Denver food community. That's pretty fantastic.
Totally.
Also, the Denver voters, who I do appreciate voting for a tax increase to fund healthy food for Denver's kids.
Yeah.
So thank you, Denver voters. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Let's vote for it, not the other ones.
Right. That great point. So like food is foundation for healthy kids, healthy food for healthy kids in our communities. And if your neighbors aren't healthy, eventually it's gonna like come back to you too, because we're all connected. All right, our final question, and everyone's gonna answer it this time. And I think first it's gonna be Jamie, and Kezia will keep you on the screen. What's your personal call to action? And that can be either, things that have worked for yourself or things that you would suggest for others if they're curious on how, they can get involved. What do you think, Jamie? Take it away.
Yeah. Well, Kezia started to talk about it a little bit with the mutual aid organizations. When I was thinking about this question earlier, since you did tell us what the questions were going to be earlier, just a little behind the scenes there, I started thinking about this beautiful essay that Arundhati Roy wrote back in April of 2020 that's called "The Pandemic is a Portal." And in the essay, she, which I'm going to quote from in a minute because I love that essay, but she talks about how, like, the pandemic is a life-altering, world-altering event, and we can choose how we respond to it. And I feel like when she wrote that back in April, it was still not clear how we were going to choose to respond to it. But in the past few months, I have been like so heartened to see how many people in Denver have shown up for so many causes, and seems like, at least right now, like it's momentum that's going to continue. So that's just like awesome. I think that as far as a call to action, if you have something you're passionate about, find out who's doing it and ask them how you can help, because I guarantee someone's doing it. We have a vibrant, powerful community that is always working on lots of problems. Can I read the quote, Amy?
Yeah.
It's not okay, cool. So I really want to read the last two paragraphs of Arundhati Roy's essay. So she says, "Whatever it is, coronavirus has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists. And in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our databanks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. I think you posted the link to the whole essay. I love that essay so much.
Cool. Thank you very much. And a note on that with what you said, there are people out there in your city doing it, and things that I have heard recently is that people that are on the ground, especially, they're tired and they need support. So if you are able to offer some like physical assistance in that way, I think that because obviously there's so many ways to help, right? Like financial and spreading the word and conversations. But if you are able to physically show up and if that's safe for you and you're able to do that, please do, because people are tired and they definitely need support. So find your area of passion or what interests you and start talking. And we can also shoot us an email, info@denverfoodrescue.org. We'd love to connect people to like-minded, similar valued organizations. So we would love to help. And a lot of us have expertise, outside of food. So let's bring that all together. Like the point of this now. Thank you. So, Kessia, call to action, some steps.
Absolutely. Before I go on my little decolonize spiel, I would love to plug the Rocky Mountain Mutual Aid Network. Their website is incredibly comprehensive, and you can sign up with the skills that you have available to you, the things that you would like to contribute, and it's like a hub of neighbors all around the Rocky Mountain and Front Range area that are asking for aid and providing aid to one another. So I would absolutely go check them out. Their website is rmman.org, Rocky Mountain Mutual Aid Network. They're they do great work. But as far as me and my personal call to action, again, I truly think that it all boils down to decolonizing. And when I say decolonizing, I mean everything that we think about in our current system, from gender to power to justice to food. It's everything. The land that we live on, just like Amy started off the series of saying, the land we live on is traumatized. The people in power continue to uphold racism. The entire country is built on the graves of indigenous and enslaved people. And we live on illegally occupied, stolen land. So when we realize and acknowledge how deep that hurt is, we can begin to heal ourselves and our communities. With Food as Foundation, we need to look to regenerative agriculture to heal the land and food sovereignty to empower these marginalized communities to feed themselves the food that they want to eat. Let that good food grant us the nourishment and energy we need to push against all other injustices. Again, it all comes down to food that gives us energy to fight for queer rights, because colonial gender roles did not exist before the conquest. Let us house and support our houseless neighbors, because living in community means caring for everyone. And tribal living is such a beautiful lost way of life in this country. We need to abolish prisons and focus on rehab, as we reject our justice system is just so vengeful and cruel and racist. And I just don't think that we can continue to operate in such a broken system. We need to abolish ICE, because borders are incredibly arbitrary and are simply colonial constructs. We need to defund the police, who were founded as a force to catch runaway slaves, and continue to only protect white property. So I know that I'm sounding a little bit radical, but forgive me for dreaming of the life that my ancestors hoped that I would get to live. Regardless of how unattainable some of these goals may feel, I truly believe that we should all be on the same page, that one thing above all. We should be loving our neighbors, and if we are, and we truly love them, we should be helping and giving and supporting and fighting for the things that will make our communities powerful and united, like the spirits that inhabit this land. Yeah, so thanks.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. I can't even, that's just perfection. Thank you so much, Jessia, for your words and your heart. And yeah, it's not, I mean, how else are we going to get a world that we want to live in if we don't imagine it, talk about it, and like start chipping away at it? And it's really important to at least identify it and speak it and put it out there. So thank you for speaking that truth. All right, we've got Michelle up.
All right.
All the action you share.
Yeah. So, oh man, hearing Kessia speak is just, it's always so powerful. I love it and inspiring. It just, yeah, so much of what she said is how I feel. And also, I think thinking about all the things that I feel called to do is overwhelming because I want to help everywhere. I want to help everyone with anything they need. But I helped someone start the car today. Like I don't care. I want to help in any way. If there's anyone who says, who speaks up and says that they would like someone to have their back. And so I think what I've found that is helpful for me, because that is very chaotic, and I end up stretching myself too thin, is that I try to focus on a couple things at a time. And right now I feel called to focus on food and water. And so those are really the things that I feel I've put my energy into, both with working as operations manager for Denver Food Rescue and being a board member of Headwaters Protectors, also doing photography for both organizations. I feel that that's one of the things that comes naturally to me, is to capture things visually through photography. And so it's one of the ways that I've been able to take immediate action. I just show up with my camera, and then I think with Denver Food Rescue and being operations manager, thinking about one of the things that Jamie and I have been talking about is not just how many people can we serve, but which is one of the conversations we have, how can we serve more people? How can we distribute food to more places, more families? But also, how can we make sure the quality is high? And if it doesn't feel like it's high, then it's not, that doesn't work for us. And so what do we do then? And how can we make sure that the food that is being distributed is just amazing? That, sometimes I went to Family Start today, which is one of our no-cost grocery programs. And I looked at the boxes and I was like, oh man, my mouth is watering. Oh God, these things, these produce items, these bakery items. I'm like, oh gosh, they look so good. I'm so hungry. And that's what I want. I want to go to these no-cost grocery programs, look in the boxes, and just start basically drooling. That's the goal. So I guess that those are the calls that I'm focusing on right now, is how can I use my talents as a photographer, and how can I use my position at DFR to get really high quality food and water to everyone in Denver. I want everyone to be fed and watered. Sounds like a plant, but it's fine. We're all just plants. It's fine.
And we're all just food also.
Yeah, true. Full circle.
You're a great example of one using their gifts and talents to serve. And I think that that's something, every single human can look for that in themselves, and use that as a lot of life affirming purpose as well. And I don't think that we spread that message enough, even if it, it doesn't have to be something huge, or you don't have to be a professional photographer, but know, there's so many things that are unique to every individual that
Yeah.
if they just plug into that a little bit and think about like how that can be shared. And yeah, and even on a micro level, again, back to your neighbor. Thank you. All right, Solid, you're our last answer. All to ask again.
Well, I mean, when we talk about personal growth, I think sometimes it's really hard for me to detach myself from my roots. You know, I usually, in my interest, I usually always try to think about what's going on in other part of the world because I came from somewhere else. And I do think that, um, this pandemic really affected other people in all over the world. It's not just in the US. So there are also like other um, environmental events that happened, in East Africa, for instance, the invasion, of like crickets and things like that, that really ravaged, crops, all over the eastern parts of Africa. So, when I want to talk about core, I think I always think about how can we incorporate indigenous knowledge. When I say indigenous knowledge, I mean indigenous people all around the world, to our food production and also to the relationship that we have with food. You know, for instance, when I was working for the Botanic Garden in Claremont, we conducted some research on topiary beans that only grows on the western side of the United States, but those beans really survived for hundreds of years, and that were found on archaeological sites, and really looking at things like that to say, oh, maybe we should be using those beans, like more of these beans and use less water, right? The Sustainability Institute, I think it was in Johannesburg, right? They conducted some research where in Kenya there's a tribe that can also uh, accurately predict the weather, right? Based on the leaves or the trees, the position of some animals come out at a certain time when it want to rain, in few hours. So how do we incorporate this knowledge, right, into our everyday life and using our crop calendar for instance, if you live in the United States and you want to be able to eat avocado all year, right? You need to know that this avocado that's coming here, has some background that you need to do some research on, right? So it's a lot of these things and thinking about, okay, when is me growing up in Benin, I only eat orange when it's orange time because we don't eat orange all year long, right? Round, you don't do that. When it's potato time, on the calendar, that's what we eat, that's what we got, and you don't ever think about eating something else until it's available naturally, right, on the calendar. So that's really, I think, things that I'm always interested in thinking about all the time. How can we really look at our natural processes and mimic those natural processes into our production system? That's it. And then when we talk about sustainability, we throw that word so much, around sustainability, sustainable, living sustainable, this is sustainable. But like it's really not that complicated to live, sustainably. It's really not. It's really looking back at the way our people used to live and really mimicking those ways, right? It's basically saying, hey, I have so much food at home. Let me knock on my neighbor's door and give them some of my potatoes because it's gonna go bad in 2 days. And I'm not gonna be cooking with, these potatoes. I'm not gonna eat your apples. But again, here, right, we got to a point where we have to have it all, right? And we're not sharing as much. And then lastly, I really, I just moved to Denver, and I just really want to thank our volunteer community here. It's been really incredible working with people who are passionate about what they do, and most importantly, really trying to give back to the community. I have so much shout out. I don't want to call anyone's name here because I don't want to leave anyone out. But I'm really thankful and I feel really blessed to work with people who are just giving the time, the opportunity, but most importantly, really trying to learn about and from the community that they are serving, and that's very important to me.
Amen.
I think that's it.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, y'all. I think Christine and I are gonna take it away and close it out, but wow, what a staff, what hearts, like what minds. They are, yeah, obviously you can see amazing. So hopefully this has given you a little bit more knowledge on like who we are, what we're about, what we're working for, how you can join us. And I will say that also, we don't hold all the answers. We don't know. We need to continue to, like, again, learning from community, like that's you, that's everyone. And yeah, we want to hear it and we want you to be a part of it. And thank you.
Yeah, totally, Amy. I was going to say the same thing. You know, it's we know that food is foundation, and we know that the way that we have our no-cost grocery programs and just the overall mission of our organization, we know that there's certain steps that need to be taken in order for us to obtain that goal. And we can't do it by ourselves. We do it with you. We do it for you. We do it together. So during this series, you know, food is foundation. That is the call to action. The call to action is, let's provide Denver with a more cohesive food access space. Let's think about how food can be the foundation in everything that we do. Again, like I said before, if it isn't a part or if it isn't a vehicle or a driving motivating force for whatever you're doing, whether it's mental health or young youth violence, or, you know, whether it's yoga classes, you know, everything should have some kind of a food aspect to it. And again, we want to get to it, and we want to do it with you, not for you, not about you, but we want to do it with you. So this is an encouraging segment to invite other organizations a part of the food access landscape. This is a call to action for those that are working in different aspects of community, just really building up those muscles and really providing a space for us to break down these barriers, and let's get to the root causes of why there's so much systemic injustice and why there is so much systemic oppression out there. Again, we want to do it with you. So there's links in the chats, denverfoodrescue.org. info@Denver Food Rescue. Please hit us up. Please come do some work with us. Let's have these conversations. Let's cook some food. Let's talk about recipes. Let's talk about Salik and what he was talking about when, you know, there's a food story. You know, in Benin, they don't eat oranges all year long. And why is that? And why do we feel privileged to be able to do that when half of the other side of the world doesn't have that same privilege? We should be ashamed of ourselves, ashamed that we're not having these conversations, and ashamed that our neighbor has different feelings and is addressed in a different way than we are. So I sit here, a part of my privilege and a part of my leadership, really making sure that we are combating this, and we are getting towards these conversations to really make a more just and equitable Denver. So again, my voice, you guys can hear it. I'm a little emotional just listening to my team and knowing all of the hardships that not only Denver Food Rescue has faced in this food access landscape, but also what all of you guys are facing out there. You know, our family and our communities out in Boulder, and our Asian American communities, our Pacific Islander communities. It's been hard. It's been a hard, long week, but we know that food insecurity is a pandemic with itself. So it's been hard, long years, and there's more years to come and more work to be done. So we invite you. We love you. Please be blessed. Please take away anything that you have from this. Please share it out, and please invite your neighbor to our next series that we have. Again, we are so humbly blessed to be able to be in this space and be able to do the work that we're doing. And we can't do the work without you. Amy, thanks so much for setting up this series. I think it was a long time coming, and I can't wait to have more dialogue and really talk about why food is the foundation for everything that needs to happen. So thank you so much for joining us as the Denver Food Rescue team. I wish I can have us all up on screen, but again, we are so humbly blessed.
To Janelle, our board president, she's dropping things to support that's in like bills and whatnot. Thanks, Janelle. Love you. See you next time. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Bye, guys.
Bye.